It's 6 p.m. on a Monday here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let us begin with the headlines. In her monthly meeting with top officials, President Park highlighted the need to maintain full readiness against North Korean provocations, adding she'll use her upcoming diplomacy tour to recruit the international community to counter Pyongyang. South Korean lawmakers begin questioning officials from British company Reckitt Benckiser in the deadly disinfectant scandal, criticizing the company and the British government for being uncooperative. Donald Trump is now dishing out the details on his controversial immigration plan. This comes as the latest polls show the Republican presidential nominee closing in on his rival Hillary Clinton. President Park chaired her monthly meeting with her key aides this morning. She called for defense readiness against North Korea's threats and also laid out her goals for the upcoming state visits. Song Ji-sun starts us off.
President Park began her message by stressing the severity of North Korean threats, which have now become an imminent danger to the south. Regarding the North ballistic missile launch last week, which was an apparent protest against Seoul and Washington's joint military drill, President Park warned that the survival of the nation and the people will be at risk if Pyongyang managed to load a nuclear warhead on its ballistic missiles.
이제 북한의 핵과 미사일은 단순한 불안 요인이 아니라 우리 안보에 매우 심각한 현재의 위협이 되고 있습니다. 북한이 어떤 형태로 도발을 하든 그 시도 자체가 북한 정권의 자멸로 이어질 수 있도록 확고한 응징 태세를 유지해 주기 바랍니다.
The president's message will be reiterated to world leaders at the upcoming Eastern Economic Forum, G20 and ASEAN summits, where she'll call for stronger, coordinated international efforts to counter the unpredictable regime and see greater room for regional economic growth.
러시아 라오스 방문과 아세안 관련 정상회의에서는 극동지역 경제개발 협력 방안을 논의하고 북핵 불용과 이를 위한 안보리 결의 이행 등 국제사회의 대북 압박 동력을 강화하는 데 초점을 맞출 것입니다.
President Park also vowed to take a leading role in open trade against recent protectionism while calling for domestic unity against North Korean threats. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Tensions on the Korean peninsula escalate as North Korea continues its missile provocations with the annual Seoul-Washington military drills taking place in South Korea. Adding to mounting concerns, it seems there could be more provocations in the coming days, including attacks or abductions attempts on South Korean nationals. Connie Kim tells us more.
In the face of North Korea's ongoing provocations, South Korea believes there could be more to come before the current South Korea-U.S. Ulchi Freedom Guardian military exercise comes to an end on September 2nd.
North Korea fired a submarine-launched ballistic missile while the Ulchi Freedom Guardian military exercises are taking place. That's why there is ample possibility that Pyongyang may carry out additional provocations rather than stopping with threatening words.
Upon the North's SLBM launch on Wednesday, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un reportedly ordered officials to take a series of, quote, eventful action steps as a full-fledged military power if Seoul and Washington threaten the dignity of Pyongyang. And the latest provocation seems to fall into line with Kim's orders in March to carry out nuclear warhead tests and ballistic rocket launches that could fit nuclear warheads.
Since Kim Jong-un's orders have not been fulfilled yet, Pyongyang seems to be engaging in other forms of provocations towards Seoul.
The North has fired multiple short and medium-range ballistic missiles as part of efforts to advance its missile capabilities. However, following Kim's orders in March, no nuclear warhead explosion test has taken place as of yet, raising speculations that the North may soon test a nuclear warhead in order to fulfill what it called a series of eventful action steps. In addition to nuclear threats, there are also concerns regarding the safety of South Koreans in China. Amid speculations of more high-profile defections of North Koreans, South Korea's embassy in China has warned South Koreans residing or visiting the country to be extra vigilant as there are concerns Pyongyang could mastermind abductions or terror attacks on South Korean nationals. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
South Korean defense officials highlighted the gravity of the threat posed by North Korea's submarine-launched ballistic missiles. According to the Defense Ministry, during Monday's parliamentary hearing, Pyongyang's SLBM technology has been significantly improved. The system could be used in actual warfare in less than 3 years and would pose a direct threat to the nation and even to U.S. territories. The officials added Seoul must strengthen countermeasures, but did not specifically comment on lawmakers' demands of procuring nuclear-powered submarines. Defense Chief Han Min-gu also confirmed in the hearing that the ministry has not decided where to station THAAD and is still considering 3 alternate locations in Seongju County, in addition to its first choice, the Air Force Battery at Seongsan. The newly elected leader of Korea's main opposition Minju Party is staking out a clearer stance regarding the THAAD issue. For details on how Chu Mi-ae is different from her predecessors in that respect and the reaction from rival parties, let's turn to our Shin Se-min.
Changes are coming to the Minju Party of Korea under its new leader Chu Mi-ae, who wants to move the party in a more progressive direction. One major change is her strong opposition to the planned deployment of the U.S. missile defense system THAAD to South Korea. Her predecessor, interim party leader Kim Jong-un, was neutral overall on THAAD, saying its deployment was inevitable in the face of Pyongyang's ballistic missile threats and Seoul's strong alliance with Washington. But as new party chief, Chu has vowed to give the party a clear stance on the issue, making the rejection of THAAD an official plank in the party platform. Her position has garnered a lot of attention from the other major parties. The ruling Saenuri Party's floor leader Chung Jin-seok called it disappointing and regrettable, arguing that in the face of security threats, South Korea needs to make a rational decision based on the national interest. Ruling party lawmakers also urged the government to consider building nuclear-powered submarines, saying South Korea's military needs to be able to effectively detect the North's submarine-launched ballistic missile threats. The minor opposition People's Party chief Park Ji-won, however, welcomed Chu's stance. He said it's as if the People's Party, which has stood alone against the ruling party and its THAAD deployment, has added thousands of reinforcements to its ranks. But Chu's new approach isn't limited to defense. She's also outlined an economic agenda different from the Park Geun-hye administration's, including closing the wage gap between temporary and permanent contract workers. Observers say that with the opposition taking a position further leftward in the lead-up to next year's presidential election, the 20th National Assembly is likely to be one of confrontation. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Lawmakers have opened a hearing to find out who's responsible in a case of disinfectants used in humidifiers that proved toxic and led to the deaths of more than 100 people here in Korea. More than a dozen witnesses, however, failed to show up for the first day of questioning. Kim Ji-yeon has the full story.
On the first day of the hearings on Monday, National Assembly lawmakers grilled witnesses related to the toxic disinfectants production and distribution. Their questions were focused on whether British consumer goods company Reckitt Benckiser were aware of experiments indicating that disinfectants hazardous elements when it acquired the Oxy unit in 2001. Lawmaker Lee Man-hee from the ruling Saenuri Party argued that the group should be held responsible for discontinuing experiments originally conducted by Oxy before the buyout, despite the former Oxy CEO having asked that they be passed on to the British company. Another lawmaker, Hong Ik-pyo from the main opposition Minju Party of Korea, expressed regrets that out of the 28 witnesses summoned for the case, 13 of them, including former Oxy CEO Gaurav Jain, did not attend the hearing. Lawmakers, including the Saenuri Party's Ha Tae-kyung, criticized the lack of cooperation from the British authorities, who have said the case is not a matter for government involvement. The head of Oxy Reckitt Benckiser, Atao Lassi Safdal, who did participate in the hearing, apologized to the people hurt by its products and their families. But he added the company was following local guidelines and regulations at the time, noting the PHMG, or polyhexamethylenguanidine, was not then categorized as a hazardous substance. Safdal acknowledged that later research showed Oxy's products may have caused direct harm to the human body, and added that he was not aware of the product's child safe mark, which was placed without prior testing. The next National Assembly hearing on the case is to include testimony from senior officials from the country's top distributors, including E-Mart, Lotte Mart, and Home Plus. The humidifier disinfectant case came to light after 4 pregnant women died of unknown lung problems in 2011, which led to an investigation that confirmed a connection between more than 100 deaths from lung problems and the chemicals used to clean household humidifiers. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Switching over to a different story now, a site in Seoul steeped in the pain of Korea's annexation by Japan has been transformed into a memorial site. A place to remind us of historical facts we must never forget. The place of remembrance was unveiled today. Lee Ji-won takes us there.
Exactly 106 years ago, the Korea-Japan Treaty of 1910 was signed at this very site, proclaiming the start of Japan's colonial rule of Korea. But on August 29, 2016, this historical location, home to so much pain and suffering, is reborn as a memorial site. Since last year, Seoul City and the Memorial's organizing committee have been working to turn the site where Japan's colonial-era resident general used to live into a memorial commemorating Japan's sexual slavery victims, the so-called comfort women. And on Monday, at the foot of Mount Namsan in central Seoul, the reborn place of remembrance was unveiled.
The victims of Japan's sexual slavery have repeatedly said they fear their painful history will be forgotten. By creating the site, we hope the younger generation will learn and remember the correct historical record and reflect that when building Korea's future.
One commemorative piece added to the site is a marble wall engraved with the names and the testimony of the comfort women. Another work is a huge stone reading "History Not Remembered is Repeated." Attending the ceremony were Kim Bok-dong and Gil Won-ok, 2 of only 40 victims of Japan's sexual slavery who are still living. They thanked everyone for coming, but also expressed their strong views on the Japanese government's pledge of 1 billion yen, or about $10 million to help the victims.
We won't take Japan's money. Shinzo Abe must first make a formal, sincere apology in front of the press, restore our honor, and then compensate for their actions.
She also urged the government to seek that apology, but it remains to be seen whether the victims' voices will be heard. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
Korean shares fell on Monday, fueled by growing expectations that the U.S. Federal Reserve will announce a rate hike by the end of the year. The Fed is reportedly divided on the issue, and Chair Janet Yellen added fuel to that speculation with her comments last Friday. Kim Min-ji looks beyond the numbers.
Korean shares traded lower for a 4th straight day on Monday. The benchmark Kospi fell 0.25% from the previous session to end at over 2,032. The tech-heavy Kosdaq lost almost 2.5%. The local currency weakened against the U.S. dollar, falling over 11 won from the previous trading session. This comes as a rate hike may be on the horizon in the U.S. Fed Chair Janet Yellen said last Friday that the case for a hike had strengthened in recent months, thanks to improvements in the labor market and expectations for solid economic growth. Although Yellen did not specify the timing, she said the U.S. was nearing the Fed's goal of maximum employment and price stability.
Well, she's obviously looking at labor market conditions, and I think specifically the impact that a stronger, tighter job market may have on the prospect for rising wages. So I think she's accepting that economic conditions are supportive of a rate hike.
However, most watchers believe a rate hike will come not at the Fed's next meeting in September, but toward the end of the year. CME Group sees a possibility of an increase at 58% for December, while Bloomberg gives it a 62% chance. This as the U.S. still has to gauge the possible fallout from Britain's decision to leave the European Union, and in light of Europe and Japan's negative interest rate policies.
We do think that she's okay with hiking rates sometime in 2016, but the market's perception of what's going on today is that they're more inclined to hike in December versus September.
The Fed raised interest rates for the first time in nearly a decade last December, but has since kept steady on the back of a global slowdown, market volatility, and tepid economic data. The Fed has 3 more policy meetings scheduled for this year. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Over in the United States, Donald Trump appears to have gained a second win. Even after harsh criticisms for his anti-immigration wall speeches, the Republican presidential nominee is pledging to get tough on immigration. This, of course, is made possible as he is catching up to Democrat rival Hillary Clinton, according to polls. Kim Jong-soo has the latest in the race for the White House.
Donald Trump stirred fresh controversy during a campaign speech in Iowa on Sunday, when he said he would institute a tracking system that will ensure immigrants who overstay their visas are quickly removed from their country.
On day one, I'm going to begin swiftly removing criminal illegal immigrants from this country, including removing the hundreds and thousands of criminal illegal immigrants that have been released into the United States and United States communities under the incompetent Obama-Clinton administration.
Trump also proposed an online verification system that will prevent illegal immigrants from gaining access to social welfare.
We're going to build a great wall on the border, and we're going to institute nationwide E-Verify, stop illegal immigrants from accessing welfare and entitlements, and
experts see Trump's remarks as a response to criticism from hardline Republican conservatives who argued Trump had pivoted from his past hardline stance in a bid to win over Hispanic voters. His rival Hillary Clinton continues to come under fire as well, where unethical donations paid into her foundation before and during her tenure as Secretary of State. A new national poll from Morning Consult, taken from August 24th to 26th, shows Trump has closed the gap on Clinton from 6% to less than 3%. Both candidates remain highly unpopular among the general public, with 58% of voters saying they have an unfavorable view of Trump and 57% saying the same about Clinton. Kim Jong-soo, Arirang News.
This is where we wrap up our newscast. As always, thank you for watching.